welcome to the Masculine Spirit Podcast, where we discuss masculine development, spirituality, and potential from a Christian perspective. I'm Robert Krause, and I'm joined by my co-host, Noah Bills, and today we will be continuing the Virtues and Vices series, which I started last week with our special guest, David Boulay. In this series, we're going to be discussing virtue each week and a vice that corresponds to it. So today, we're going to be examining the importance of honesty and the dangers of deceit. So that's going to be our little dichotomy that we're going into today. Honesty versus deceit.
The yin and yang.
They're two big ones, two very big ones throughout the Bible.
For sure.
James chapter 5, verse 12 says, "Above all, my brothers, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or by any other oath, but let your yes be yes and your no be no, so that you may not fall under condemnation." For me, this verse has always been one of my favorite verses because I think it just emphasizes the importance of speaking clearly, not trying to mislead people or be ambiguous in what you say, but just speaking exactly what you think and what you mean, and not making hollow promises as well.
For sure. Kind of like the idea that you don't want to have any like gray area with what you say. I mean, if we're talking about honesty versus deceit, a big part of that is like intention. So you have to make sure that what you're talking about, what you're conveying to people, and what you say has clear and strong intention. If you're trying to make like a good point, if you're trying to get anything across, at least.
Yeah, and I think the more that you convey your honest intention, your authentic intentions in what you say, the more seriously people are going to take you. You know, if you're somebody who is just speaking to speak, you know, kind of idle talking, idle words, then it's going to result in people not listening to you nearly as much, which is not ideal for your interactions.
I mean, when I was younger, I felt like I talked just for like the sake of talking, and even to an extent, I kind of do that. Like, I'm just like being playful. I just kind of just say whatever, just like say things for like the sake of getting a response. But you can easily tell that you're not being taken seriously and that your words like have little weight to them or value. So ultimately, you know, the value of speaking clearly and simply is that people understand exactly what you mean, what your intentions are. And if they see those intentions as good and productive, then they will follow you.
Yeah, and I think there's a time and a place to joke, obviously, a time and a place to just have a conversation that isn't super serious and you're just doing it more for the entertainment value.
For sure.
But you definitely don't want to be, you know, mixing or like blurring the line between the times when you're serious and when you're not serious. Like, if it's a time to be serious, you want to be completely serious, speak exactly what you intend to say. And if it's a time to joke and it's not as intense, then it's okay to be that way too. But you don't want to blur the line between those things, because that's when people will start to not take you seriously and might not know your true intentions.
Yeah, no, it causes confusion for sure. I mean, I feel like I see this like in the workplace. Like, I work at a restaurant currently, and like when things are slow and there's not a lot going on, like I just like will talk to my coworkers and just kind of joke around, not really take anything seriously. Like you said before, like it's totally fine to have like these types of frivolous conversations where it's not like, you know, not everything you say has to have crazy meaning or have an impact. You're trying to like get people to think the way that you are. But when things like pick up at the restaurant, things start getting really busy. and there's an obvious need for communication between you and your coworkers, that's when you have to kind of drop that and understand, okay, we have a clear goal here. There's something we have to accomplish. I'm going to communicate the best I can what I need from you, and I need you to tell me strictly what you need from me. And there's no room for, joking around at that point, because it's like there's work that needs to be done and we have to do it to the best of our ability. So gotta cut the act at some point, like it's really fun to have those types of conversations. I have them all the time. Robbie and I were having one right before this podcast, but there are definitely clear times where you have to make yourself simply known and you have to convey your ideas exactly as they are.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that another time when this principle comes up is when someone comes to you with any kind of proposal, like, not proposal as in asking to marry you, but
For sure.
just asking something from you. Say your friend is asking for help and you're not really sure if you can help them on that certain day, or you might be busy with something, but you don't want to say no. So you say, maybe, yeah, I think I can help you out. I'll see what happens. It's like, if you know that you're actually going to say no in the end, just say no.
Don't beat around the bush.
Yeah, exactly. And you might come off as a little bit insensitive in the moment. You want to say it in a loving way, but it's better to be perceived as insensitive than to be flaky on people.
I mean, yeah, you don't want to be dishonest, but like you said, it's how you communicate like these things to people matters a lot. Like, obviously you want to do the best you can to not be insensitive. It can, like, when you reject people or the things that they want, it can obviously come off as that way. But if you convey it in a loving manner, you're like, oh, you need this from me? Well, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not in a place right now where I can help you with that. Like, is there anything else I could do other than that one thing you asked me? That shows that you care and that, like, you are capable to an extent of helping them, but not in the way that they were asking in the first place. If they find that insensitive, that's more of a them problem, I think, because you're providing what you can, you're being honest and communicating your best with that person.
Sure.
No gray area allowed.
It kind of comes down to the type of people that you want to attract. Do you want to attract people that are going to be offended when you're honest with them and you say that you're not able to do something? Or do you want to attract people that will accept that and be like, nah, I'm okay that he was, or I'm happy that he was honest with me, because then I can move on and maybe ask somebody else to see if they're available.
For sure. I mean, honesty in like any relationship is very obviously huge. I don't think I have to go much into that. Like, if you really want to get the most out of a relationship with somebody, like, being open and honest is the best way to go. I can't stand having like friendships or relationships with people who, or maybe like yes men, like they just want to like tell me the things I want to hear, but they don't have like anything to back it up, or they don't like show, like, their actions don't back up their words. That goes into the deceitful category of things. That obviously is going to get you nowhere. Like, that just causes turmoil and confusion within the two of you. And that's not a relationship that you can allow to prosper in a proper fashion.
Yeah, that's a form of a parasitic relationship where the person is basically looking to get something from you, whether it's validation or some type of material gain, something like that, just by sucking up to you and being a yes man for you. You don't want those type of people to be around you. It's a bad type of relationship to foster.
I agree. If I ever recognize those things like in somebody, I sort of just like I don't really like personally believe in like cutting people off unless they've done something like crazy against me, but if they're just kind of like that sort of person, I recognize that, and I just kind of keep them at a distance. Like if I understand that what they say to me isn't 100% truthful, there's always like something behind every word that they say, so to speak. I just kind of like keep them a little bit away. I don't let them get super close to me because if I were to allow them to be super close to me, then how would I be able to trust them knowing the things that I know about that person? You really just like can't.
Yeah, it's usually not necessary to completely cut people off, completely cut off contact with them. Because when you start to just distance yourself from people and not feed into interactions with them, they'll usually distance themselves from you as well. Jeremiah chapter 17:9 says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it?" It's a rough one.
Kind of is. I mean, I get it, but it's like still hurts to have it said out loud sometimes. The idea that like internally we are capable and often are deceitful to ourselves and other people in some fashions. I was just thinking about this the other day. I've realized that I've developed sort of a mechanism for myself when I'm going through rough times. I gaslight myself into thinking that like I'm doing better than I actually am to make myself feel better.
Nice.
It's like, oh, like that wasn't that bad. Like just keep getting through. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just keep going. I'm like, maybe there is something wrong with that. Maybe I should be doing A, B, and C. But like, if I gaslight myself into thinking it's fine, then it helps me move through it. But obviously, it's not a healthy thing long term, and I should work on it. And I am, but it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of a defense mechanism when you see yourself getting into a situation that you know is not ideal. You try to rationalize things and tell yourself that it's okay, which is good in a sense if you're coming from a standpoint of hope. Like, yes, everything is going to be okay in the end, but that doesn't mean that there's not things that you should address right now that are
For sure.
issues in your life that are coming up and affecting you. So you need to, you have to be watchful of those things and try to address them as they come up. But yeah, it's very easy to deceive yourself in those kind of situations. I find that happens to me relatively often as well.
100%. And I mean, we have like, as Christians, we have this understanding that, we put everything in God's hands. Ultimately, like God's will, like will come to pass. But that doesn't mean that we, like you said, like sit idle and we don't address the problems and issues that we have. God's will and the best intentions come to pass when we bring his values and virtues into our own lives and our own walk, so to speak. Like you still have to live out your end of the deal in order to see those things come to fruition.
Sure. And it's interesting to consider that our nature, our default is to deceive ourselves and deceive others. I think that's one of the main things that this verse is saying. The heart is deceitful above all things. The heart is referring to our human nature, human emotions. I think emotions
Our
is a big
desires.
part of it. Yeah, you can easily get carried away by your emotions, which
For sure.
may be leading you in the correct direction or in the wrong direction. Yeah, we talked about this in one of the previous episodes. Kind of the process that you need to go through when you feel an emotion, you need to be able to filter it to see, is it something that is reflective of reality, or is it something that came up for other reasons.
Yeah, exactly. You have to like kind of sit down and like really understand why you're feeling the way you feel. It's justifiable to have emotions, but sometimes acting on them in harmful ways obviously is not justifiable. So you have to really like sit with it and let it stew, so to speak, and kind of figure out where it's coming from, why you're feeling it, rationalize it, and then so you can just like move on from it. So you don't have like these inklings to be destructive to yourself and to others, because obviously that's not productive. We did a whole episode on productivity, gotta stay productive. It's a good thing.
Go back to episode 1. Episode 1, that was a
That was
solid
episode 1.
start.
Yeah. Go back to episode 1, pause right now, watch the entire thing, and then come back here.
Yeah, there's no way that you can make it through the rest of this video unless you watch that first. It's
Yeah,
going to go right over your head.
Yeah. Yep. We're going to start speaking another language. Hola,
I'm going to
¿cómo
start
estás?
speaking in tongues.
Sí. En español y en lenguas. Tongues.
See. Yeah, and God's truth has to be placed over our own truth. It's difficult to know exactly what God's truth is. I think that the Bible is the standard that we have. Ultimately, it's the best standard. But God's truth can also be revealed through things like creation. I think that demonstrates the truth of God as well. And so this kind of comes back to what David and I were talking about in the previous episode about humility. We have to humble ourselves before God and realize that our perceptions are not perfect. They're faulty. But the perspective of God is perfect, and we have access to that. We have access to that through the Bible, through prayer, through fellowship with other Christians. And so the main thing we want to do is to not be reactive in tense situations. We want to rely on that support system that God has given us.
I agree. It just kind of goes back to, the understanding of everything. Like if you're confused about certain situations in your life, referencing the Bible and the teachings from Jesus himself and the values and everything that he preached can be really insightful to some of our own situations, even in modern times. Like a lot of it definitely correlates. But then also just kind of like seeking communion with, your fellow Christians or loved ones and everything can really help you rationalize things from another perspective and help you get down to, why am I wanting to act out and be deceitful? Why is my heart feeling this way and acting this way? What I can do to stop it? How can I be more honest with myself and other people around me?
Sure. And one personal experience that I have with this aspect of self-deception is, well, it's actually self-deception and deception of others. But I'm sure this is something that a lot of people have dealt with. But when I was a teenager, I would pretty regularly lie to my parents. And I know it's crazy. Nobody's ever done that before.
Wild. Who are you, Robert Krause? Come on.
I know, man. I'm supposed to be a pillar of morality, but
Not anymore.
I did that regularly for many years because I was kind of living two lives. I was engaging in substance abuse, to say the least. I was going out at times that my parents would not be happy with me going out. All the normal stuff. That's unfortunate that it's normal, but that's the world we live in.
For sure. I mean, yeah, I had some similar stuff. I lied to my parents too.
Dude, no way.
Had to put that out there. Yeah, I know. But like, but for me, it was like, it weren't blatant lies. Like my parents were pretty lenient with me in the sense of like, I could go out and just like whenever I wanted. They wouldn't like me doing whatever. Like I can't say that like I could go out whenever and do whatever, but they trusted me that like if I went out at like 2 a.m., they'd be like, oh, okay, just be safe, have fun. I'm like, cool. But they would ask me like where I was going, who I was going to be with, and what I was doing. I would generally be truthful about the where and who, but the what I was doing, maybe not so much. But I would kind of like lie to myself in a sense and be like, oh, can't be that bad. Cause like for the most part, I'm being truthful. You know, I'm telling them who I'm hanging out with and I'm telling them where I'm going. So like, it's not really that bad, you know, but in reality, like there's still a kernel of dishonesty set in there. Like ultimately what I was doing in the end was deceitful to my parents, and they, you know, were unaware of like a whole other scope of the ne'er-do-well activities I was engaging in.
Some of which were with me.
Some of which were definitely with you, 100%, 100%. We learn from that. We grow from that, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting though, because looking back on that time, my relationship with my parents is very different now. I don't
For sure.
lie to them about anything. I don't feel the need to lie to them about anything. You know, we're both
Sure.
independent from our parents. But I think that in those teenage years when people are growing up, probably that deceitful relationship that a lot of people develop with their parents, it might be one of the first times or one of the biggest times that they allow themselves to fall into a pattern of deceit that is regularly repeating. And for me, when I allowed myself to get into that pattern, it kind of like splits you into two different people.
Personas.
At first, it's difficult to lie to your parents. You're like, oh man, this is crazy. I can't believe I'm doing this. But then it just becomes second nature. You're like doing it all the time. You have one life that you live with your friends, one life that you live when you're at home. You start to kind of blur the lines for truth for yourself, because
For sure.
you're justifying both of those lifestyles that are contradictory.
For sure. I mean, it's just like you said before, it just puts you in a pattern of like deceit. And eventually it's like any new relationship you foster from then on, it's like, okay, like how am I portraying myself to this person? I'm used to never portraying myself honestly to anybody. So it's like at this point, like who I present myself to be is no longer the person that I really am. And like you're saying earlier again, you're even lying to yourself. Like who really are you if you're presenting yourself in 5 different ways to these 5 different groups of people, you know, one way at work, one way with your friends, one way at home, one way with your parents, yada, yada, yada. I mean, in the end, obviously all that conglomerates to who you are, but ultimately you should just act as you are. But in a sense that's like you don't want to have the destructive persona present. Like you still want to have the good values and virtues. If you have, you know, self-destructive capabilities, like that's fine. Like that happens to people. Like it's just something that we unfortunately develop through whatever means. You know, you fall in with the wrong crowd of people, you kind of develop those habits, or maybe like you weren't raised in the best setting and it's just kind of like second nature. That's something that you need to acknowledge and not pretend doesn't exist when you're with group A, Because what if group A could help you with that, and you never show that side to them, but it's just something that's always festering inside of you.
Sure. The other thing I noticed is that when you are living those two separate lives, two different lives that are contradictory, for me, it made me much less confident in my own true identity because I didn't really know what my true identity was. I was contradicting myself at different times with different people. And it kind of felt like I was just, when I was being my good little self with my parents, I was putting up an act for them. And then when I was doing all that other stuff, I was just kind of going along with what my friends were doing and going along with my own selfish desires as well. So you have to, I think a very important part of growing up is melding those two things together, that like very real and very important respect for your parents, but also your independence. You have to meld those things together, be confident in the identity that comes out of that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I've noticed that when I was younger with my parents, like the reason I lied to them is because I knew that I was doing things or acting in ways that they wouldn't approve of, and I wanted to spare myself the guilt of them knowing. But like you said, like there are things that you're going to develop outside of your parents' perspectives and outside of their values, which isn't necessarily a harmful thing. Like, you're never going to be like exactly like your parents. Like, you develop your own independence, your own view of things, but it's better to ultimately be honest with that and be honest with yourself. Two people are never going to agree on everything. You can agree on a lot of things, and that's chill. That's always fun, but don't lie to yourself and say that you are these two completely separate people at different times. Like, it's all just you, just hiding from it and hiding it from other people.
Yeah. And that's the kind of scary reality of it, is that we can try to split ourselves into different identities when we're with different people doing different things. But in reality, we
Mhm.
can't split ourselves. We're always one person. So those two identities that we try to adopt, or maybe even more than two, in some cases, if we don't reconcile them, they're just constantly warring with each other inside of us.
Side of you, there's two wolves.
I knew it was coming. There's two wolves inside me, Mom.
You don't
It's not a
understand about
phase.
It's crazy.
Crazy. Well, another verse that I wanted to address is kind of on a little bit of a different topic than what we were talking about before. Still relating to honesty and deceit, but this one is more about the dishonest gains that people can try to achieve. This is Proverbs 20:17. Bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterward his mouth will be full of gravel.
Yep.
I love sweet
Makes
bread.
sense. I love gravel. I used to eat gravel as a child.
That's why you're so manly, dude. That
Right.
jaw strength is crazy.
I eat nails for breakfast. No milk.
No milk. That's crazy. Nothing to wash it down.
Nothing. But yeah, I mean, this verse definitely has a lot of weight behind it. Obviously, the product of deception is it's not sweet in the end. It's not worth it. Like, if you have to bring down other people to get what you want, it sullies the fruit that you've gained. There is no real fruition from such action. maybe momentary pleasure, but ultimately what's on your conscience, I think, weighs a lot more than what you can have there for a minute, so to speak.
And I think we see this in many different ways in society. You see tons of people in the news, tons of business people, politicians, world leaders that we know have gained their power, their money, all of these things that people chase. They've gained it through dishonest means. And no matter how successful they may seem, they're probably not satisfied, and they may be depressed. They probably are going against their conscience in many ways, which kind of leads back to the split identity thing. You can fragment yourself into different people based on the goals that you want to achieve. Maybe you're trying to be a loving family man, but you also want to be at the top of a business. But if you take that desire to be the best at your business or at your job too far, then you're going to be walking all over people, domineering, not concerned with the damage that you cause to others. And yeah, you may very well find success, like material success, that way. Obviously, being a dominant and aggressive and power-hungry person does lead a lot of people to achieve power or achieve financial success, whatever kind of achievement you're chasing. But is it really worth it? Do you actually get the contentment that you're looking for?
The people that make those pursuits typically never stop. Like, it's always something they're always going for, and they can have more than 99.99% of the entire human population will ever have. And you see them just still working away with at it. And it kind of just shows you that spiritually, they're not at rest at all. Because I feel like for me personally, like, if I were to just have enough money just to make sure I have a good home for myself, my loved ones, and I can take care of myself and the people around me, I no longer would have that pursuit for money. It wouldn't be there anymore. Like, I wouldn't have that drive. Like, I can't see myself being like a multimillionaire up to billionaire level at all, nowhere close, because there'd be a point where I have that satisfaction and I have that spiritual rest within me where it's like, I've accomplished what I need to do. Anything else is just frivolous. Anything else requires me to walk on the backs of other people, and it's not making any real progress. It's setting other people back just so I can see numbers on the bank account go up. It's like, buy a yacht. What do I need a yacht for, dog?
I don't think there's anything wrong with setting goals for yourself that are unachievable, so that you essentially keep going and you're always growing, always moving towards something.
I agree.
But it's more about, what are you willing to sacrifice for that? You can sacrifice your time. You can sacrifice your comfort, and stuff like that is okay. What you don't want to sacrifice is your relationships. You don't want to sacrifice or how should I phrase this? You don't want to hurt other people in order to achieve those things. And you don't want to damage your spiritual health either.
And that's why I was speaking more of a personal anecdote. Like, for me, like, I can't see myself getting to that like wealth level. I'm not saying there's like, you can't get to that status and not be spiritually well and have like good relationships and everything, but you just really have to make sure that what you're doing is really just sound and ethical. The sacrifices are made on your own behalf. You're not forcing other people to make sacrifices for your own gain.
Yeah, and then there's kind of this idea of the tyrant leader who takes power by force and becomes extremely powerful, extremely materialistically successful in the eyes of the world. But, the people that are following that person don't actually have any respect for them outside of fear for their life or fear for the well-being of their family. It's all fear-based.
Yeah, or it's just envy. It's something that they want from that person.
Yeah, and when your loyalty, the loyalty that people show you is based on fear that you inspire in them, it's only a matter of time before your entire empire comes crashing down.
Somebody
Yeah.
else that's always willing and happy to take your place and take it from you. If that's the world you put yourself in, like you're fighting against other people all the time.
Live by the sword, die by the sword.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. And I think that, we're talking about all of these big kind of seemingly unachievable statuses, people with seemingly unachievable statuses. And that's the lens that we've been coming at this dishonest gain discussion from. But I think we also have to acknowledge that there are smaller ways in normal people's lives that dishonest gain can manifest. For example,
That's a good point.
you were talking about yes men, and it's, you might think of yourself as someone who would never become a yes man, but, you're about to go into a new field as an engineer, getting jobs. Imagine you get hired on to your dream company and your boss is like the CEO comes in one day. Like, how are you going to act around the CEO? Are you going to try to impress
Sir, yes,
him
sir.
or exactly.
You say
Or
jump,
are
I
you
say how
gonna,
high.
yeah, yeah. Or are you gonna choose to be your authentic self while still trying to be respectful of him, of course. But it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can be put into situations that you might not expect.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can feel, and in a situation like that, there's definitely a lot of pressure for you to like please that person, like as much as you can, because obviously like they're in a position of power. You're brand new. Like they could find any small reason to just like get rid of you if they don't like you. But I think like a way to kind of get around that is that, let's say like that CEO is asking like if they bring in an idea to you and they're asking like your opinion on it. If you think the idea is bad and you think of ways to improve it, it's still very valuable and honest to be like, well, maybe I like the core function of the idea. Like I like the purpose that maybe you're setting it out to be, but the implementation that you're presenting to me is not quite the way I would do it. Like you kind of like sprinkle in a little bit of truth and a little bit of reinforcement to it. You don't just say, yeah, that's a brilliant plan. I think that's amazing. I would do that exactly the way that you told me. It's like, no, well, I like the idea. I think A, B, and C could be switched. Maybe, this stage could be done in this way. Maybe we fabricate this sort of a plan instead. I think it's ultimately better to not be a yes man in the end, even though there is that pressure that you want to just be a people pleaser. Ultimately, it's still good to just, again, just be yourself, be honest, show what you have to contribute to these things instead of just like, because if you're a yes man, you're not making contributions. You're not showing what you're capable of. You're not solidifying your own ideas. You have to put your own special emphasis on things. And in the end, that shows you as somebody who can be trusted, somebody who's their own free thinker. I'm a free thinker. I'm not a sheep, I think in the end, that's still obviously a lot more valuable. You have to be confident in yourself sometimes to be honest in situations like that.
And from the perspective of the CEO in this scenario, you would want, the CEO should be someone who wants the their subordinates to offer suggestions and to be honestly thinking about the issues that the company is dealing with and proposing solutions. And if your CEO, if your boss, whoever it is not the type of person who is willing to hear respectful suggestions and even criticisms, like, is that really somebody that you want to be working for? Probably not.
I mean, there's many other factors that play into where and why you work at a place, but that's definitely a huge one. Is look at who's above you, who's managing you. Are they also working in an honest fashion? Are they working in a way that like makes you feel valued and allows you to have that individuality and creativity to problem solve and just do your own work? For some people that might not be super important. Maybe you just like getting into a job where you just kind of do like one repetitive thing over and over, and there's not really a lot of room for like extra improvements or creative solutions, which is fine. You know, there's value in that sort of work and just kind of being mastered at a single thing. But for me specifically, going into an engineering field where a lot of it's problem solving based, I would need somebody who can trust my opinions and will allow me to work in a fashion that allows for my own creativity. You know, giving me criticism, but not like being cruel with it. Stuff like that really helps you evaluate, like, is this a place that will allow me to thrive? Is this somewhere I want to really work and be long-term? You know, maybe you're just doing it for the short-term experience to get to another job. That's fine too. But it's good to recognize, like, if you're trying to be at a place for however many years, a long amount of years, if that's going to work out for you or not.
Yeah, and you have to strike a balance between being respectful of your boss, submitting to their authority, and having the freedom to make your own suggestions and enact changes where you think they should be enacted. It can be very difficult to do that. I think you have to kind of get to know your boss in each situation first, because if you don't know the person, you're not going to know what they're sensitive to, how they might react to different things. And sometimes you just have to, you could be making the same suggestion, but you have to do it in a way that is respectful and not undermining their authority.
For sure. In a way that they'll be receptive.
Last verse of the day. This one also comes from Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 13. Whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy. Confession is very tough, especially depending on the type of sin that you may need to confess.
Hey, Catholics do it all the time, so it can't be that hard.
Yeah, Catholic confession, that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, we got another podcast episode for that.
But yeah, obviously confession is, like you said, it's very difficult. And I mean, ultimately it just kind of depends on like the things that you've done and maybe the things who you've done them to, especially if you're confessing it to that person, because there's a lot of, you know, guilt and shame around that. And, you know, we live in a society where every single transgression is met with punishment. And obviously none of us like punishment, you know. I wish I could just do whatever I want and get away with it. But it's, I mean, another form of just self-honesty is that by putting that out there, you're honest with yourself that, okay, I have done these things. These were bad things, and I recognize that. And once you kind of put that out there, it really allows you to grow from it, better understand like why you did it, better understand why you shouldn't do it again. Because the more you kind of hide that from other people, you just end up hiding it from yourself until it just doesn't become truth anymore.
And I think that anyone that you talk to who has harbored secrets for an extended period of time, but eventually come to the point where they they do reveal what's going on in their heart, or they confess it to someone, they'll tell you that in that moment of confession, there's this huge weight that comes off of them, this huge freedom that they experience. That's what I experienced, at least. Or I've experienced that several times in my life. The Bible says the truth will set you free. It's kind of hard to know what that means, but if you've experienced what I'm talking about, then I think you know exactly what that means in that context. It's incredibly freeing to be able to be honest about something that you haven't been honest with people about for a long time. And I think one of the main reasons for that is that dishonesty breeds isolation, because there's things that you're hiding from other people and things that you're denying to yourself even. So you're cutting off a part of your identity from people, or a part of, just a part of your actions from people. So when you reconcile that part that you've been isolating from people, and you reconcile that to someone through confession, just brings unity and brings a sense of camaraderie and compassion to the whole situation.
Holding on to something is often more painful and more destructive than letting it go. Obviously, there are consequences to making the confession, because, there's no transgression that isn't met with punishment typically, but that's just life. Like, the alternative is holding on to it for the rest of your life and letting it sit and fester and weigh on you. The guilt can be immeasurable sometimes with that. But like you said before, there's so much healing and construction that can be done once you let go of it, let it out, atone for it, meet your punishment with humility, and just move on from it.
Yeah, and in my experience, when you are holding on to some kind of secret, some kind of lie, you have this intense fear that when it's revealed, everything is just going to fall apart. People, you're thinking of all these ideas. You're like, my friends are going to hate me. My family's going to disown me. my girl is going to leave me.
They might.
So they might. Hopefully you're not in that situation. But usually, when you actually do confess those things in an honest manner, God will meet you where you are, and he's probably going to have the mercy to hold your life together even during that time of instability.
Yeah, in the end, it's a lot more wholesome and healing to have that put out there if you really want to build up the relationships with people. I think the people I have sometimes the most close-knit relationships with are those that we've committed transgressions against one another, but we put it out there quickly. We forgave each other for it, and we moved on. And I mean, in the end, if you truly love somebody and they truly love you, love does not hold a record of past transgressions. It just holds a record of the things you guys have gone through and dealt with together and how you've grown from it. Your relationship shouldn't be about the things that you guys have done against each other. You're just holding it like a knife at each other's throat. Oh, remember February 2nd last year? You owe me dinner now, or whatever it is.
For sure.
No relationship should function like that. You should just be open and honest, and that allows for so much more than just pretending like these things didn't happen, or just holding these things against each other.
Yeah, and that's the other side of this once you are willing to confess whatever you've been going through. It leads to much more unity in your relationships, which is a huge thing. I mean, that's what we all want, you know. Theoretically, I would hope that most people want unified relationships, but yeah, that's a huge thing. Probably one of the main takeaways I would have for you guys is dishonesty and deceit and secrets leads to isolation and weakness, and honesty and all of the above leads to unity, strong relationships, and confidence in your own identity.
I completely agree.
Thank you all for joining us. Please send us your thoughts, suggestions, and criticisms, especially criticisms, at masculinespiritpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to continuing this journey together, and have a blessed day.
Finding strength in submission, that's the mission. Breaking chains of tradition, new position. Walking in His vision, divine commission. This is masculine spirit, listen. Started as a boy with a heart full of questions, seeking validation through worldly possessions, learning wrong lessons about masculine expression. Depression hit heavy with painful suggestions that I wasn't worthy, wasn't making impressions, till I found His message and started progressing. Through every blessing and every testing, now I'm addressing the lies I was festering. Stand up, warrior, it's time to rise. Let His light shine through your eyes. Every battle makes you rise. This is where your spirit flies. Yeah, this is where your spirit flies. See, the thing about manhood, it isn't in muscles, though I built them daily through physical struggles, deeper than hustles and temporary puzzles. Spirit was muzzled till Christ came to shuffle my priorities, showing me purpose is foundational, rational, factual, but still inspirational, national, global, yet still congregational, building generational wisdom, that's operation. Finding strength in submission, that's the mission. Breaking chains of tradition, new position. Walking in His vision, divine commission. This is masculine spirit, listen. Biblical principles, giving me clarity. Carrying wisdom through all this disparity. Apparently strength isn't measured in scarcity. Rapid with charity, prayer, sincerity. Finding the warrior spirit inside of me, guided by a light that was hiding inside of me. Pride had to die for this ride to be righteous. See, Christ had to rise for this life to be bright in me. Sometimes we fall. Sometimes we crawl. But through it all, we hear His call. Building walls, standing tall, breaking falls, for our brothers. Yeah. Brothers, we stronger when walking together. Whether the weather is stormy or better, we measure our treasure in spiritual leather, and never say never to heavenly preference. Learning to lead when we're serving the least of us, freeing the beast while releasing the priest in us, seeking increase while the feeder was keeping us, chained to beliefs that are deeply deceiving us. Stand up, warrior, it's time to shine. Let your light lead down the line. Every brother by design. This is where our spirits climb. This is where our spirits stand as a beacon for the brothers still seeking. Show them strength isn't weakness when you're down on your knees. Every trial that tested me, every mile that pressed in me, built the man God blessed in me. Now I'm walking in destiny.